Next, we're going to take a look at the thyroid gland. So this one definitely will crop up on lab exam too. Once we figure out what exactly we're looking at, it is actually pretty easy to identify the basic unit of the thyroid gland. For this video, we're going to use the Human Protein Atlas because it allows us to move around a bit and practice identifying different features. Before that, I want to talk about the macroscopic structure of the thyroid gland. And for that, I'm going to use an image available in your modules. This is an image of our bronchial tree, which we haven't gotten to yet, so don't worry about recognizing that term. But we have basically this apparatus, larynx connecting to our bronchial tree, which is going to enter into the lungs. So this is a passageway for air. And around this entire apparatus, we have some cartilage here in blue, and we have our thyroid gland. So what we have here is one half of that thyroid gland. This is technically the lateral lobe. We have a connecting piece in the middle called an isthmus, isthmus, and then we would expect to see a lateral lobe on the other side, overall creating this kind of butterfly shape. So just keep this in mind. We will refer to this model in the future, but for now, you just know where the thyroid gland is. This is actually our thyroid cartilage, and that's why thyroid gland has this name, because it sits just underneath our thyroid cartilage. Functionally, the thyroid gland is going to receive thyroid stimulating hormone from our pituitary gland. So because this is a stimulating hormone, it is going to basically stimulate the release or increase the release of a different hormone. The thyroid itself secretes 3 hormones. And again, we'll talk much more about this, or you will talk about it in physiology. The hormones that are secreted by the thyroid itself are T3, T4, and calcitonin. And that is pretty much as in-depth as we will get with those hormones for now. Let's talk about structures. So we have the basic unit of the thyroid gland. So if we zoom in here, we will see this repeating pattern of circles over and over again. These are basically storage units. And so each of these is called a follicule. And within that follicule, we have colloid. So I'm going to go ahead and let the atlas help us navigate here. We want to zoom in on colloid. So basically we've gone from this macroscopic view, maybe a 4x magnification, and as we zoom in here, we'll start to pick out those individual follicles. So each of these follicles is going to be filled with a fluid called colloid. And the follicles are going to be those secretory units. So this is where those 3 hormones are going to be involved. So a little more about T3 and T4. They control our basometabolic rate. So they're really important for maintaining homeostasis, maintaining weight in the body. So sometimes when people have thyroid issues, they can either gain or lose weight really rapidly. So we definitely want to keep a handle on that with T3 and T4 regulation. Those hormones are stored in the colloid. So they're stored in this fluid-filled pink space in the middle of the follicle. A little more about the follicle here. You'll notice we have a lining, a single layer of cells. These guys are still cuboidal cells. So we see that pattern over and over again where endocrine system structures have cuboidal cells. And this is no exception. These cells surrounding our colloid are called follicular cells, which makes sense because they're the lining around our follicle. So these guys are producing that T3 and T4, which is then stored in the middle here in that fluid called the colloid. We have that last hormone, calcitonin. This guy is a little different. So around each of these follicles, we have some additional cells. They are not involved with the follicle, so in this case we call them parafollicular cells, which is a mouthful. All that means is they are around the follicle. So para means around. These are going to be cells that are found nearby the follicles but not lining them. So we have these guys here. They're just hanging out. They're not forming a lining, so they are called parafollicular cells. These cells are what are going to produce calcitonin. So sometimes we can have too little or too much calcium in the blood, especially if your diet is deficient in calcium. So we have a separate regulatory system for that we'll talk about in the next video. But basically, this hormone calcitonin will decrease calcium levels in the blood when it is released. So it's going to encourage uptake of calcium by different organs in the body. And a lot of times that means this calcium is taken from the blood and laid down in our bones. So a lot of times increased calcitonin activity is associated with increasing bone density, laying down more bone mass. So that's as far in depth as we will get regarding these hormones. To summarize, we have the basic unit of the thyroid gland being the follicle, each of these round guys here. Follicles are filled with colloid, that fluid. This is the storage place for our T3 and T4 hormones, surrounded by our follicular cells. And then we have those cells on the periphery. These are called parafollicular, and they are producing calcitonin.